Brothers and sisters, I can't shut up. Well, brothers and sisters, I'm going to tell you everything I know about leftovers. That's right, leftovers, brothers and sisters. I'm talking about food. You know, you make a dinner and you don't eat it all, so you have a big pile of it left over and you save it for tomorrow. That's leftovers, brothers and sisters. Well, maybe it's one of those days, you know, where you cook a big meal. You know, it's one of those times of the year where you have a big feast. It's a feast day of the year, and maybe you cooked a giant turkey. You roasted a turkey for your big meal, but you didn't eat it all because it is a giant roast turkey, and so you got a lot left over, and so you're eating turkey all week. You're having, you know, turkey gravy and waffles. You're having all kinds of turkey casseroles and any kind of magic you can come up with. You're eating turkey all week. I tell you, my grandma, she was good at this. You know, anytime the family would get together, she would make a big pot of spaghetti. She had a giant cauldron that she would use to make spaghetti, and she made her own sauce and the whole deal, and it was fantastic. That was a good meal right there. But I tell you, she made enough spaghetti for 100 people. She really did, and our family was not that big, so we'd be eating spaghetti for days, brothers and sisters. You cannot even imagine the amount of spaghetti that was left over from one of those meals. But that's okay. I love to eat leftovers. I tell you, some foods I think are even better with age. You know, you talk about a big pot of chili. That is something that is meant to be eaten days later. I tell you, when I was first starting out, when I was first setting up shop for myself, before Mrs. Brother Jack came along to sort of expand my palate, you know, before she diversified my food interests, about the only thing I knew how to make was scrambled eggs and a big pot of chili. And so I tell you, every Sunday I would get together and I would make a big pot of chili, and I would eat that all week. That's the only thing I knew how to make, and it was good. I loved it, and I tell you, chili gets better with age. By the end of the week, things were getting pretty sparse, but that's okay. That's okay. Sunday would roll back around and we'd make another giant pot of chili. And I don't know. I think some foods are just better the next day. I'm having trouble coming up with anything that isn't good as a leftover. I mean, some things are better the first time. I understand that. But I can't think of anything that isn't still good the next day. I'm telling you, leftovers, what doesn't work is a leftover. It's fantastic. Well, I know some people that maybe are too into the leftovers. I think that in their mind, they ate it for dinner last night. They don't want it again for dinner tonight. They want something new. They want excitement in their life. I tell you, Brother Jack has never needed food to provide excitement. There's plenty of excitement in my life without having to diversify my food options. I have no problem eating the same thing every day, day in and out, over and over and over. We can do that. I have no problem eating chili for a week. Some people, they might want to shake things up a little bit, maybe mix it up with a little meatloaf here or there. I understand. I know that's crazy thinking. I understand, though. Well, brothers and sisters, I don't know. I'm sure there are some restaurants out there that don't let you take your food home with you. But I've never been to one. I've never been of the class of person who can go to a restaurant that won't let you take your food home. To be honest, most of the restaurants we frequent, they just automatically pack it up and ship it out with you when you're paying your bill. And I appreciate that because I really, you know, if you have leftover food, especially with kids, you end up with a box of leftover food. You go home and put it in the fridge, and now you don't have to worry about cooking tomorrow. You don't even have to think about it. You're prepared. That's the beauty of leftovers. You can get ready for tomorrow today. So I don't know. I like those doggy bags that the restaurants send home. Some people may not be too comfortable taking their food home from a restaurant. I don't know. I can't understand that. But maybe they just feel like they're too good to be dragging their food home. I don't understand that way of thinking. I think it's just good preparation. So brothers and sisters, I hate to waste food. I hate wasting food, brothers and sisters. I hate throwing away food. With little kids, sometimes that happens, but I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I make the dinner. And when I make the dinner, I plan on leftovers, because Mrs. Brother Jack, she got to go to work the next day, and she takes some leftovers for lunch. So I always build in some leftovers into the plan. You know, it's like you're planning ahead for an emergency. In case something happens, boom, you got some leftovers. You are good to go. And I tell you, Usually Mrs. Brother Jack, she uses a glass container, you know, a reusable container, and she packs some leftovers and takes them to lunch. You know, we're such a disposable society. We tend to throw things away. We just use it and pitch it and don't worry about it and throw it away. But I like to reuse my containers like that. It's healthier in a lot of ways, and you don't have to pitch your containers. So how you package your leftovers is important, brothers and sisters. You got to think ahead and make sure you're prepared. You know, if you got enough spaghetti to feed 100 people, you got to know where you're going to put it in the refrigerator. You don't want it going bad before you had a chance to eat it, and it might take a while. So, you know, I hate throwing things away. I hate to, you know, we're such a disposable society. You know, we just pitch stuff all the time, and I don't use a lot of disposable products, brothers and sisters, but I will freely admit that in the cupboard, we have one token roll of, you know, plastic wrap. The stuff that comes in the roll, you pull it out and you wrap stuff up with it. We've had the same roll for about, you know, maybe 10 years now. I don't know. But I'll admit we have it. We don't really use it that often. To be honest, I think it was probably left here by my mother-in-law. She wraps everything up. I think that, you know, if you checked her refrigerator, you might find that a bunch of grapes might individually be wrapped in plastic wrap. She wraps everything. I'm telling you, she wraps everything in plastic wrap. And the kids here the other day, I think they must have got it from her. They must have spent some time with Grandma because, you know, they didn't finish their dinner, and I was going to put it in the refrigerator. I said, you're going to have to finish this the next day. These are your leftovers. And they said, hey, can you put some glass paper over the top of that? And it took me a while to figure out what glass paper was, but they were talking about plastic wrap. They wanted me to wrap it up with the plastic wrap and save it for tomorrow. Well, that's okay. But it's a thing now, brothers and sisters. Now it's a thing. Now they want to wrap everything in plastic wrap, just like my mother-in-law. They're wrapping everything. They're wrapping their crackers in plastic wrap. So I might have to get a new roll. I don't know. I'm not sure that one's going to last. Well, brothers and sisters, when I was a kid, I had this idea instilled in me that you got to finish your food. And it really stemmed from my grandpap. And I think the issue was he didn't want to have to deal with the leftovers. He didn't want to go through all the hassle of wrapping it up and putting it away. So he said, make sure you finish your food. And then he'd give you the big long story about, you know, there's kids somewhere in the world starving. They don't have anything to eat. And you're sitting here wasting your food. It's sort of that Depression era thinking where everybody, you know, you got to use what you have because you might not have it tomorrow. And I really appreciate that line of thought. And I learned a lot from him. But I tell you, there's some drawbacks with that. I tell you, if you're not careful, that way of thinking about being forced to finish your food all the time, that could create some long-term health effects down the road. You could develop a weight problem if you're always thinking about finishing your food. So you got to be careful. Stop when you're full and save it for tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with leftovers. It's okay. And I tell you, brothers and sisters, it was a real problem for me because I got to a point where, you know, I was finishing everybody's dinner. And especially with little kids here, if they don't finish their dinner, I find myself finishing my dinner and finishing their dinner. I'm eating everybody's dinner because I don't want to waste the food. So now I just wrap it up and put it in the fridge and it's leftovers. There's nothing wrong with leftovers. So brothers and sisters, that idea about finishing your plate, it's had some ramifications for me down the road. That idea from when I was a kid about cleaning your plate. I like to clean my plate. I hate to waste food. You know, and I was at a period in my life where I was working a third shift, and so we get off with our third shift and we go out for breakfast because that's the time of day that it was. And I had a buddy, we go out to breakfast pretty regularly, and we were sitting there eating breakfast, and one day he looked at me and he said, I've never seen anybody lick their plate as clean as you do. And that's when I knew I had a problem. So brothers and sisters, I want to tell you, you might not know this, but there is a musical equivalency of leftovers. That's right. It started out a long time ago when music came out. Music would come out on records, and there'd be, you know, one song on the record would be the A-side, and that would be your hit single. And you flip it over, and you'd have your B-side. And I don't think they meant that the B-side wasn't as good as the A-side. It was just the B-side. It wasn't the A-side. I don't know. And that's progressed, brothers and sisters, and now you have artists that come out with a whole project that'll be a project for B-sides. And it doesn't mean the same thing anymore, but what it means is these were a whole bunch of songs that they finished, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they put it all together in one project. It's a smorgasbord, brothers and sisters. It is a musical casserole. It is all the leftovers that you didn't know what else to do with, and you jammed them all together, and you got a musical casserole. It is the leftovers of the music, brothers and sisters. So brothers and sisters, I got a lot of B-sides in my catalog as well. If you look back through all the work I've done, there's a lot of songs that didn't fit in anywhere else, and these songs are now leftovers. I got a bunch of leftovers, brothers and sisters. I got a lot of songs that are finished and I don't know what to do with them. So I think maybe someday I'll smush them all together and make my own musical casserole. We'll call it Leftovers. So brothers and sisters, on a more serious note, I'm recording this episode during the time period where the whole world, that's right, the whole global society is shut down on account of the corona pandemic. You know, everything's shut down. We're all sort of stuck at home, biding our time, waiting for things to get back to normal here. And we don't want to have to go out if we don't have to. We don't want to have to go out and buy more food, so we're trying to eat what we have, brothers and sisters. We're trying to use what we have. And I tell you, brothers and sisters, it's made me far more aware of how I use the food. It's made me more aware. I don't like to waste food, brothers and sisters. I hate to waste food, but it's made me more aware of the places where I am wasting food. And I know this is first world problems. We're still eating okay, don't worry. But we've had to ration our snacks a little bit. We've had to pay attention to what we're using and how we're using it, and we don't want to have to throw anything away. So we are really taking advantage of our leftovers, brothers and sisters. I cannot remember a time in my life where I've been more grateful for the leftovers that we have. Well, there you go, brothers and sisters. That's everything that I know about leftovers. God willing and the creeks don't rise. We'll be back again soon to talk about something different. Until next time, you all be fantastic. And remember, eat your leftovers.